You ever wonder why the smartest people on the planet make the dumbest decisions? Billionaires, presidents, Nobel laureates, people who run the world suddenly find themselves at the center of scandals that destroy their lives in a single day. It seems like they have everything: money, power, teams of lawyers. But their brain is defenseless against one simple trap. Epstein didn't use blackmail. He used neurochemistry. Today, we're breaking down the mechanism that turns kings into puppets, and you'll learn how your own brain can betray you in exactly the same way.
Here's the thing. We believe the elite are untouchable, that these people are smarter, more cunning, that they have some special protection. But if you understand how the brain works, it becomes clear. Their neurochemistry functions by the same laws as yours, no difference whatsoever. And when you grasp these laws, you immediately see why a prince, a professor, and a financier can sit in the same room and do things they'll regret for the rest of their lives.
Let's start with the most uncomfortable question. When you have everything, what do you start to feel? Emptiness. It works like a hedonic treadmill. Your brain adapts to any level of pleasure. The first million brings euphoria. The 10th brings indifference. A private island, a yacht, dinner with the president, all of it loses the ability to activate your reward system. Dopamine receptors get dulled like worn-out piano keys. You're richer than 99% of the planet, but inside you, there's a vacuum. And at this moment, someone appears who offers not more. He offers forbidden. For a brain with a broken happiness thermostat, the word forbidden acts like a match on gasoline. Because it's the only thing that still triggers a reaction, the only thing that makes the reward system wake up. Epstein wasn't selling services, he was selling transgression, boundary violation, the feeling that you're above the rules, that laws are written for everyone else but not for you. This is about validation, about confirming your exceptionality in a world where you've already stopped feeling alive. Now let's talk about who knows how to set these traps. These aren't ordinary people. These are people with a specific psychological architecture. In psychology, it's called the Dark Tetrad. 4 traits that combine together create the perfect predator: narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and sadism. Sounds like a character from a thriller, but these are real people who walk among us, smile in photographs, shake hands. Narcissism gives them unshakable confidence. They genuinely believe the universe revolves around their axis. Machiavellianism gives them strategic thinking. They look at people like chess pieces. Each has a function, each can be moved or removed from the board. Psychopathy removes internal brakes. They don't experience guilt, shame, regret, the emotions that stop ordinary people. And sadism is the final touch. They get physical pleasure from controlling others, from your dependence, from your suffering. An ordinary person can't exist in this mode. Their empathy kicks in. They see pain in someone else's eyes and stop. People with the Dark Tetrad simply don't have this switch in their operating system. They can look you straight in the eyes, hug you, call you a friend, and simultaneously plan how to use your weakness. This isn't anger or hatred. This is cold calculation. And it's precisely the absence of emotion that makes them deadly dangerous. But here's what nobody understands. The trap works not because they're brilliant. It works because they understand the architecture of dopamine, the reward system in your brain. That same system that makes you check notifications every 5 minutes. That same system that makes you addicted to likes, messages, other people's attention. Epstein created dopamine stacking, layering pleasures on top of each other like layers of a cake. First, a flight on a private jet. Then dinner with people newspapers write about. Then an invitation to a private island. Then access to something that officially doesn't exist. Each step adds a layer. Each layer amplifies the previous one, multiplies the effect. And your brain records the pattern. This person gives me what doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet. This isn't friendship and never was. This is biochemical addiction, created by hand, like a clockwork mechanism. And now the most dangerous part. When you receive something regularly and predictably, you adapt to it. Dopamine drops, the effect weakens. But if you receive it unpredictably, sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes a lot, sometimes nothing, the addiction becomes steel. This is called intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism behind slot machines, behind endless social media feeds, behind toxic relationships. Why do you reflexively reach for your phone? Because you don't know if there's a message there. It's precisely the uncertainty that creates compulsive behavior. Epstein understood this on an instinctive level. He was available, then disappeared for weeks, invited to events, then ignored calls, gave access to his world, then closed the doors. And his victims' brains started hunting, not for pleasure, for predictability, for the feeling of control they'd long since lost. But the trap doesn't snap shut instantly. It closes gradually, millimeter by millimeter. This is called the foot-in-the-door technique. First, they ask you for a favor, small, practically invisible. Will you fly with me to the island, meet an interesting person, take a photo together? You agree. Why not? After all, you're not doing anything wrong. But your brain has already recorded, I said yes to this person. And when the next request comes, slightly stranger, slightly more questionable, slightly more over the line, your brain activates protection. But it's not protecting you from the manipulator, it's protecting you from cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological pain the brain experiences when your actions contradict your beliefs. You consider yourself a decent person, honest, principled, but you've already taken a step towards something questionable. And the brain doesn't want to admit the mistake, because admitting the mistake destroys your identity, your understanding of who you are. So it chooses the easier path. It justifies. It's not that serious. Everyone does this at this level. I'm in control of the situation. I see everything. Each justification is another step deeper into the trap, another thread wrapping around your hands, your legs, your throat. And at a certain moment you realize you've gone too far. You've committed an action for which you can be destroyed publicly. And now you're no longer a victim of circumstances. You're an accomplice to a crime. And then the final, most brutal mechanism kicks in. God syndrome, the illusion of absolute control. People at the peak of power exist in a distorted reality. For years, they've been told they're special, that normal rules don't apply to them, that they can buy any judge, solve any problem, escape any catastrophe. Their brain absorbs these signals and starts believing in its own invulnerability, like a religious dogma. They think, I'll get away with this. Not because they lack intelligence, but because their life experience confirmed this hypothesis time after time. They broke laws and received no punishment. They lied under oath and were believed. They used people as expendable material and remained at the top of the pyramid. And the brain recorded the pattern. I exist outside the system. The laws of gravity don't apply to me. Until one day, the system breaks, and everything they built over decades turns to ruins in a single night. But this isn't a story about one person. This is a story about a universal mechanism, a mechanism that works in relationships, at work, in family, in friendship. There are people who know how to find the crack in your armor and slowly widen it. They don't raise their voice, don't threaten openly. They make you dependent on their attention, on their approval, on the feeling that next to them you're someone important, someone special. How do you protect yourself from this? There's a technique from psychologists' arsenal. It's called gray rock. The essence is to become so boring, so predictable, so emotionally empty that the manipulator loses interest in you and switches to another target.
No bright emotions, no violent reactions, no drama, no fuel for their game. You transform into a gray rock on the road, cold, motionless, useless, and they move on, looking for a brighter, more emotional, more vulnerable victim. Because they need a reaction. They need control over someone's emotions, and a rock is impossible and uninteresting to control. Your brain is the most complex system in the universe. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections. But this system has vulnerabilities, bugs in the code. And there are people who've studied the location of these vulnerabilities, like hackers study holes in security. They know you seek approval, that you fear being rejected, that you want to feel significant in others' eyes, and they use this knowledge with surgical precision. Not because you're weaker than others, but because you're human. And this is the universal firmware of the human mind. The elite doesn't fall from lack of intelligence. It falls because its nervous system is identical to yours. Dopamine, cognitive dissonance, illusion of control. This isn't a disease of the rich. This is the basic operating system of any human brain. And the only real protection is awareness, understanding the mechanisms by which you can be hacked. You're not invulnerable. Nobody on this planet is invulnerable. But when you see the game, when you recognize the patterns, you stop being a pawn on someone else's board. You start seeing the strings. You see the puppeteer's hands, even when they're hidden in shadow. And in this moment, you gain a choice. Continue playing by someone else's rules or exit the game entirely. This doesn't make you stronger in the traditional sense. This makes you aware. And sometimes this awareness is the only thin line between you and a trap that can destroy everything you've built in your life.
Guard your mind. You only have one, and nobody but you will protect it from those who know how to turn people into puppets.